Hi, I'm Ed.
I'm Steve.
And we're the 6'5 guys. Today we're going to do a match debrief. We're going to talk about a match that we recently attended in Jordan, Montana. It's the Sage Flats match. So Steve, why don't you tell the audience a bit about the match and why we decided to sign up for that.
Yeah, sounds good. So I actually grew up in Montana. It's a beautiful state. My mother still lives in Montana, and I thought it would be a great place to go shoot a long-range precision match. We were actually looking to kind of get outside of the state of Washington, something within driving distance. And we wanted to take use of the 6'5 Guys Match RV. So
absolutely. So take a look at this magnificent piece of machinery. Again, thanks to my good friend Tim Weir, who actually gifted it to me. So thanks, Tim and Catherine. I really appreciate that.
So that afforded us a great opportunity to do sort of the shakedown initial match ride in that unit, and that's actually a whole separate adventure. We may have a few comments towards the end of this to talk about how that held up. But overall, we were very satisfied.
Don't drive on old tires. I can tell you that. I can tell you that much.
We had heard, and I actually had looked at a number of the photos on the Sage Flats Shooter website about that match, and they posted it up on a website that you may have heard of, sniperside.com, and we're like, hey, let's do this, right? Mm-hmm. So we signed up and planned the trip out there. So it was a good trip overall. Mm-hmm. Even though there's a lot of gas that was used, it was a very enjoyable ride. We took several days off to make that trip. We got out there, and it was interesting because as we initially learned about what to expect in the days preceding taking off, it actually posed a lot of questions that we didn't have answers for. So we had learned that this would be, for the most part, a hidden targets match or an obscure targets match. And I know you had asked me what that meant.
What's a hidden target? And besides the hidden targets, there's also wind. Here in Western Washington, we don't get a lot of wind. So there was also the opportunity to practice in the wind. But going back to the hidden targets, we had no idea what that meant, and I think on the way there we had this idea that they'd be IPSC style targets and like only the head would be showing,
or they would be really hard to spot like through brush, or you'd be able to just see parts of it and maybe not be certain that it's actually there.
But that was not the case.
Correct.
That was not the case. Yeah. I mean, do you want to describe what we saw?
Well, maybe I'll give a little bit of background history
of
the matches that we typically shoot as individual shooters, not a team match.
Right.
Generally, we're given the targets are out there; you can see them, right? Where they may be marked with flags or cones or something to identify them, or at least they're painted white or some color, right?
Yeah,
unless it's all banged off.
Take a look here at this picture here from like a typical match. I mean, you'll see the targets are visible, numbered, and so forth.
Right.
That was not the case.
Yeah. And on top of that, in some matches, you may actually have distances provided to you, right?
Yes.
But I think what made this match different was it was a team match, and it was designed in such a way to pose challenges in that team dynamic.
Right, exactly.
So hidden for what we had quickly discovered on day one was that the team would basically set up in a holding area or a staging area, which was actually on the other side of the hill from where you would actually be shooting. So you would not even be able to see what you would be shooting at, what ranges you'd be shooting at, or where the targets were.
Right.
We also discovered that the time started at which point you got your briefing at the staging area. You had to quickly walk up to your firing position, find all of your targets, range them with your laser rangefinder, as well as figure out what your dope is before you could start to get your shots off.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So you got your debrief, and you were coming up to the crest of this hill, and you only had the first chance to see your targets when you came over the crest of the hill.
If you could see them.
Well, that's the thing, right? So they were painted this blue, that
a dark blue.
Yeah, it was. They were painted like a dark blue that seemed to blend in quite nice with the semi-arid environment.
Luckily, they weren't painted green.
Yeah, oh, exactly. So you come over this crest, and you know they're out there somewhere. They're somewhere between 300 and well past 1,000 yards.
Most of the stages had about 5 targets.
Yeah, they had 5 targets, and so you can't see them without magnification. Again, you've got 12 minutes to hit 5 targets, which you would think is plenty of time, but as it turned out, it wasn't.
If you didn't know how the game was played as a team. Now, a couple of stages, in addition to finding and ranging targets, some of them required that you milled or did not use a rangefinder on the first target. So you actually had to mill your target using a milling reticle. Mm-hmm. Basically used your calculation to establish what the distance is before you could get your first shot off. So that made it challenging as well. I think we actually did fairly well in those. But I think on day 1, for us, it was a learning experience because we had to quickly figure out how can we come up to speed on this game.
Right.
Because I think we are pretty good shooters.
Yeah.
And I think where we actually had time on the clock to start shooting, we were hitting still. It's just that we didn't have enough time.
Yeah, so we would finish some of the stages where, if Steve was the first person shooting, there wasn't even enough time for me to get a shot off.
Yeah.
And so typically what would happen is we'd get up there, we'd find the targets, and then we'd whip out our smartphones, and once we had the yardages, and you'd scroll through, calculate your drops, and then write up cards to put in your arm board, and
then that's 2/3 of your time before you actually start firing.
Absolutely, and then once you started shooting, there were some stages where you could both get on the ground together. You could both prone out, which was preferable from a teamwork perspective because you could communicate. We could kind of alternate firing. But the most difficult situation was when only one person could get down, because once that person got done, the other person then had to get down there and basically rediscover the targets. Another interesting thing. You remember the stage that had the 3 IPSC targets, and then there was this one circular target. And we're in this paradigm where you shoot the targets in order.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But this match wasn't like that. You didn't have to shoot the targets in order. However, you had a situation where you had this one target off by itself that was difficult to spot, and then you had 3 targets that were clustered within 100 yards of each other. But because we had this whole paradigm of like, okay, that was the first target we ranged,
we should shoot that one.
We should shoot that first. We had a hard time seeing it, and we were wasting time when what we should have done was
go for the targets you could see.
Yeah, go for the targets you could see that were clustered together within 100 yards. So that was another interesting thing that we learned is that you really have to stand back and really evaluate everything that you're doing, and make sure that you're not bringing a particular mindset to the match that's detrimental.
Well, I know on day 2, we came out of day 1, I would say a little bit disheartened because we had, felt like we got thrown into the deep end of the pool and had to figure out how to swim pretty quickly. And what we came up with was a small game changer. It actually helped us in day 2, and that was we realized to save time rather than breaking out the calculators, why don't we actually manually create our drop tables. I actually had a different drop table tape set up that I brought out with me, but the issue with it was that when I went out to chrono my rounds there and double check my 0 up in Montana, I realized my ammo was a lot faster than what I had anticipated. And my drop table I created was irrelevant. It was not accurate. So I pretty much had to scrap it. We ended up creating our own drop tables using calculators and a sheet of paper.
Yeah, here's actually a picture of it. You can see that we put it in just a clear plastic protector, and actually so the wind wouldn't blow it down, weighted it down with some 9mm rounds.
And we used a Sharpie basically,
Yeah.
and what we ended up doing was we established a cadence where I would basically use my binos and LRF to find and range the targets, and Ed would have the drop table, and he would tick off the target's numbers and basically a small image of what it looked like. It was a square, circle, or so on, and what direction the next target would be. So we could go immediately from ranging targets. He would be on his rifle, and he could start shooting immediately. Or in some instances, he would identify the target, know the range, and shoot while I'm trying to find the next target, and then he would tick off what the range was. So when it was my turn to shoot, he would already have the targets and the ranges and what my drops were that needed to dial.
Yeah, and because we were shooting different cartridges, you were shooting 6.5x47, I was shooting 260 Remington. The way it would essentially work is you would range a target, you'd say, hey, it's 600 yards. So then I would tick that off on the drop table, and then I had your solution, and then I had my solution side by side, and so I would just tell you, okay, for this distance, Steve, here's the elevation, and then I would make the windage call. Yeah. And we had 20 to 25 mile an hour winds.
Yeah, we did pretty well.
Actually, I was surprised how well we did, considering our lack of wind experience. And one thing I did learn there is, I would typically hold over, but when you had to, hold over 2 full mills, I found out, at least for me, that dialing the initial windage and then doing a correction off of that actually worked out pretty well. I mean, I know you've got a Horus reticle, so are you pre-dialing windage, or you just...
I pretty much hold off. The only time I dialed windage was on the mover. And a big aha moment for me was day 2. We had a second mover stage. Now, keep in mind, I do use a Horus reticle. I almost never dial windage. And, so I dialed my windage the wrong direction.
Yes.
And the first 3 or 4 shots in the mover, I was like way off. So I quickly corrected. I was like, oh, I need to turn it the other way. And at that point, I was able to pick up 4 or 5 points on the mover. So big learning experience to know which direction you're down. So what did you think of the mover?
So the interesting thing about the mover, we shot it from the top of a pickup truck, and the wind at that point, it was toward the end of the day, it was 25, maybe pushing 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, you could feel the truck move.
The truck. So before you hit the mover, you had to hit a 66% IPSC target
or shoot at it.
Yeah,
they were just trying to establish if your elevation was correct.
Well, exactly, right. And so here this was. It was at 365 yards, a 66% IPSC target. Otherwise, an easy shot, right?
Yeah.
But the wind was moving the truck so much that I had trouble staying on the target, a stationary target, okay? I mean, I hit it, but then because of all the movement in the truck, when I was shooting at the mover, I had a hard time seeing whether I was shooting in front of it or in the back of it. Mm-hmm. And then another thing with the mover that's really important, and it almost seems like you violate one of the fundamentals of marksmanship, is you got to really be aggressive on that trigger. I mean, some people even say to slap the trigger. And because we had spent 2 full days squeezing off shots at long range, I was squeezing the trigger, and I think that also made
coming in a little bit late.
Yeah, made me miss. And we have another video segment on equipment, and I don't know how we're going to simulate a mover, but I mean, at least for me, that's just one area where I want to practice more, and I just don't feel as confident as I would like on the mover.
Now back to day 1. I know we started out the match pretty strongly, with the exception of the first pistol stage. Lesson learned there for me was don't bring a pea shooter to some of these matches.
Don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
I brought my Glock 17 9mm.
Yeah.
And you had to hit a hostage flapper, and it was fairly close, 10 yards, 15 yards.
Yeah.
I hit the flapper. Pretty much, I believe every shot it didn't move. Well, I think I moved it once, maybe.
Yeah, but so, you were using what, like this commercial 115 grain,
right?
I mean, it barely moved it, but I had a load I'd worked up, a 9mm 124 grain, you know, pretty stout load, and so you started shooting that, and
So lesson learned there is I basically will be bringing bigger ammo, or I'll start moving up to a 45. Because I've got a nice XDM 45 I could use. But yeah, it was pretty frustrating because I was hitting the target, but in order to score the points, it actually had to move to the other side.
Yeah, I had the same situation on a couple of shots, and normally when I've gone to IPSC style matches, that all these flappers are precision balanced, so you can move them with a 9mm. But we found out in matches like this, that's not necessarily the case, and you've got the wind moving the whole target, so it might not be precisely balanced. And the better shooters out there were using 45 ACP, so of course I've got a Glock for that, and be nice if they had like the equivalent of a Glock 34 and 45 ACP. I mean, I know they've got one in 40 Smith & Wesson. Maybe that's another thing I'm gonna have to buy. But
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. But.
And the boat stage, that was fun. I think we did pretty well in that. That was basically shooting in a boat at about 150 yards, somewhere around there. I don't recall the exact yardage.
No, well, I think that's right. So there was a full IPSC target at 150 yards, and you would think that would be easy to hit, but you're in a boat, and it's rocking, not necessarily because
not only rocking, but turning side to side. Too.
Yeah, it's turning because the wind is moving it. But then where the team dynamic comes in is typically in an individual event. Once you're done shooting, you start scouting your brass, you start cleaning up. But you got to realize that this is a team event, so your buddy's got to shoot, and so again, that's another mind change. You got to realize that just because you're done, you got to stay still, and you need to be mindful of what you're doing.
All right. So was there anything else on the trip that we had to talk about?
Absolutely. Let's talk about the match RV.
Yes.
So quick shout out to my friends Tim and Catherine Weir, who were kind enough to gift me a used RV that they had, and it required a bit of work to get it back on the road. But it's really become an indispensable part of our match shooting. And what's really nice about having it is, instead of staying at a hotel and spending 45 minutes to an hour getting to the match, because sometimes they tend to be in remote environments, is actually being able to set up really close to the match site. Definitely learned something though about older RVs and older tires. Namely, you want to make sure that they're not too old, because we had
and Ed has, as I noticed, was quite almost religious about how often he checked. Almost every gas station and restaurant we stopped at, he would always take a peek at the tires to make sure they were inflated or looked like they were doing all right.
Yeah, and on the on the day we were returning from the match, one of them had gone flat,
and we noticed that the gas was getting eaten up super fast.
Yeah,
as well.
it was, and so we changed that one out. It only took about 10 minutes. We kind of
use that as a team drill.
Yeah, we actually used it as a team event. And then
it took us about 10 minutes. Right?
Yeah, it took us about 10 minutes. This was on
the inside tire.
The inside tire on a dual axle. So we got that taken care of, and then the next day it really heated up. I mean, it was well past 90 degrees, and so we had a blowout of the right front tire, and
a butt puckering blowout.
Yeah, oh man. I mean, we were. I remember we were having this conversation, and actually it was about the arm boards.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was about the arm boards from Sunrise Tactical, and I was mentioning how George Gardner bought a bunch of them for his team, and right as I said George Gardner, bam. I don't know if that means anything, but I'll always remember that.
You did a good job. Kudos to keeping it on the road. That it seemed like we were gonna go off towards the median, and then you got it over towards the shoulder. And
yeah, so I mean, I can see why a lot of folks would really panic. I mean, I can understand why you have a lot of fatalities with when you have a front tire blowing out. But big shout out though to the folks at Les Schwab in Quincy, Washington.
Support your local Les Schwab. They were just amazingly great in terms of their service and dedication to their customers. So just the level of service was unexpected.
Yeah. So we called them up. It was close to a closing time, and so Jason, the manager, came out.
And we were about how many miles from town? 10? Something like that?
It was about 10 miles from town, and so it was close to closing time. And once I'd made my tire selection, it was like coming into the ER room. I mean, they took my 2 tires and they put the new tires on there. They balanced them, and then they sent me back out there. And I mean, we were back on the road well within an hour of the blowout. So again, and so I found out that right front tire that had blown out, they read the date code on there, and it was made in 1998. So that was a pretty old tire. So for those of you with older vehicles, particularly RVs, because the tires can look good because they're not used that much, but they can, when they get old and it gets hot during the summer, I mean, they will come apart, and so obviously our experience confirms that. And then when I was at the shop, Marty, our friend, stopped by.
Yeah, Marty, one of our guys that is in the Northwest that shoots long range precision. We see him at matches quite often. He went out to the Sage Flat Shooters match with another fellow named Steve from this region, I guess. But Marty and his son saw us, the RV off to the side, and they were about an hour behind us, and he pulled over to check on us just to see if we were doing all right. I was walking over our stuff while Ed was off over at Les Schwab getting the tires, and I really appreciated Marty stopping by, so big thanks to Marty and watching out for us. But told him we had things under control, and he went on his way. But yeah, we watch out for each other,
which is a nice part of the sport. I mean, that's something I really enjoy. It's not just a common interest, but people really do watch out for one another. So I mean, I know this isn't we're not click and clack the Tappet brothers. I mean, it's almost like a car talk here, but
yeah.
but again, I mean, I think an RV, if you can get like a used RV or a topper or something that just lets you get out there closer to the match, I think that would be a big help. It helped us a lot between day 1 and day 2 because we were able to, we had a nice table there. We could work on our, putting together our ballistic cards, and that was very nice. And also, you can camp in any Walmart parking lot.
Yeah, we learned that.
Yeah, which is a huge cost saver. So especially if you're traveling a few days to a match, just being able to camp out there and then go into Walmart, get your stuff. So again, hey, a shout out to Walmart and the fact that they allow people to camp in their parking lots. I think that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it was RV Central.
Yeah, it was. So again. So that's, I think, pretty well rounds out, our Sage Flats experience.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to our debrief of that match, things that we came away with. Tell us what your comments are in terms of any of the matches you went to, things that you learned. Particularly interested in hearing if you went to a team match and how you enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just send us your emails, videos, pictures, whatever you have, and we'll share them with the audience. So until then, remember, life's an adventure.
Stay on target.